So it's my pleasure, again, thank you for being here, and it's my pleasure to introduce the 5 candidates that are here who have a strong interest in being the next police chief for the city of Burien. So I'm going to ask each one of them to stand and to make a brief introduction with 4 minutes. Take 4 minutes and introduce yourself, and great. So we'll start with Don. Thank you.
I drew the microphone. Right, my name is Don Davis, and I'll describe my career. I'll try to keep it in 4 and try to keep it as brief as I can. Right now I'm in my 26th year of service with the King County Sheriff. Right now I am assigned to the Sound Transit Division. My apologies for taking the money on the car tabs. I'm sorry about that. But we are in a very expansive, and we want to cover the whole region here. There's a lot of dynamic things that are going on in Sound Transit. And describing my career, I would say that I've had mainly field operations or patrol assignments, but I've also been involved in training in various degrees and forms. And that has been my, I would say, a calling in life, that if I had an alter ego besides being a police officer, it would probably be a teacher or a trainer, because that is in my DNA. So, with those assignments, I've also taught at the Basic Academy. I've had 2 tours there. I've had worked as an interim chief in Maple Valley. I was also a police chief for the King County Airport. I did that for 3 years. That was a blend of firefighting and police work. Other assignments, I was a patrol officer in different precincts. I also worked a short stint as an internal investigator, which was a very interesting assignment. Probably the best assignments that I've ever had was when I was a trainer for new officers as they entered into their agency and entered into their new life as a police officer. And the reason for that was we had the biggest and probably the primary impact of acculturating these young people into the line of work, which is policing. I'm married, have been for over 30 years. I have 1 son who's now 30 years of age, and he's grown up to be a fine man. I actually admire him. So if I would say, he has been a wonderful and beneficial relationship there. I have lived in the Highline area since 1979. I came out here as a transplant from South Florida. I wound up staying out here, going to school, and making it my residence. I've lived in the areas of Burien, Des Moines, SeaTac, Boulevard Park, and have never really lived outside of that particular zone. So I've followed this area, and the city around here, since then, so a number of years. I also, when I first joined the King County Sheriff's Office, I started my career out here in Burien, in the what we call the southwest area of King County. And I stayed out here, worked out here for 5 years, and I always had that thing where, I'm going to come back, but my career just took different detours and paths, and so here I am, I'm ready to come back.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Well, good evening. My name is Troy Olmstead. I'll give you a little background on myself before I get into the law enforcement area of my life. So, I'm a Northwest guy. I grew up in Seattle and then moved out to the suburbs of Mount Lake Terrace, so I'm a Northwest guy through and through. I'm married, in 6 months, it'll be 30 years, and I have 5 children and 2 grandchildren. So I started my parental duties pretty early in life. So I joined the Air Force, so I have, like Don, he is a fire chief, but I started out as a firefighter. All my life I was going to be a police officer because my dad was a police officer for the city of Rittenborough at that time. and I was going to be a police officer as well. And then I got diverted. I got enamored with the fire trucks and being in the fire service. And so I did that while I was in the Air Force. And then I knew it wasn't my calling. I grew up around cops and had a lot of experience, and I had a lot of friends that were in the police service. So when I got out of the Air Force, I knew I was coming back into law enforcement. I started my law enforcement career in Arizona. I was a deputy sheriff for Maricopa County for 9 years. The Air Force dropped me off at Luke Air Force Base, so I had a year down there, and that's where I met my wife. So we started raising our family down there. And the call to return home was just too great. Even though I was pretty comfortable in my career down there, I just felt the need to return home. So we packed up everything, and I got hired on with King County and came to King County and started working here 20 years ago. That part of my life working in Arizona is a great experience because I have experience of changing agencies and experiencing a change not from the perspective of the top, but from the perspective of the bottom. And it's really important when people come to us, we get a lot of laterals from other agencies. And you find that some people are really all about where they are now, and some people are really all about where they were before. And I've always tried to balance that, to use the knowledge that I had, but make it about King County. So I wasn't really interested in promoting for a long time. I worked 17 years on the road before I even thought about promoting. And I probably wouldn't have had it not been for a captain I was working for came to me one day. And he pointed out all my strengths and the things that I was doing. And he said, you could go places, you could do some things, and you need to start focusing in on some other things. And that was a great piece of wisdom he imparted on me, and I've been able to use that with other people. So I started my process of working towards a sergeant, and much like Don too, most of us here probably were trainers at one time or another. In fact, I trained Ted. I remember when he made captain, I called him up and said, hey, you either got this because of me or in spite of me, but either way, I'm taking credit here. So training has always been a big part of my career. And then I've moved around. I've worked pretty much every area of the county, including internal investigations, which was a great exposure to accountability and labor relations. So it was a great way to understand personnel and know people and the accountability piece of police work, and also a great exposure to the executive level of decision making at the highest levels within the department. So through some mentoring with that, I got into the command staff level, and I've worked in Shoreline. I worked as the operations captain there, the detective sergeant there, the detective.
Thank you, Troy. That's 4 minutes, so thank you very much. Right. First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I think it's really important to see residents part of this critical process to select the best chief. I'd like to say that all 5 candidates are excellent candidates, and it's a matter of finding the best fit for the city. A little bit about myself. My name is Burien. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 27 years. I'm not going to bore you with all the assignments I've held. We've all had real similar careers as we've moved throughout the Sheriff's Office. I have 8 years experience serving in a second-in-command or assistant chief position with the Sheriff's Office. I have 8 years experience serving as a police chief in one of our partner cities with the Sheriff's Office. I've worked in Burien off and on throughout my career. The last 4 years, second-in-command under Chief Kimmer. I believe that I know what the needs of the city are and how to best align our police department to meet those needs and work with the community. And I'm looking forward to talking to you more about that over time. I think the best way to describe me is, in one word, is service. My life has been all about serving others. When I was first a new officer, I got to open the Park Lake Homes Community Police storefront when it was first opened in 1993. I thought it was great to serve folks living in public housing and connect with them on a personal level, to invest time so that when I had to have a police contact with them, we already had a relationship.
I've been a volunteer firefighter in my community for a number of years. I currently teach at Highline College, where I leverage that opportunity to recruit a more diverse workforce into law enforcement. This month right now, I've got a number of students who are coming out and going on ride-alongs with our Burien police officers and our unincorporated deputies so they can see firsthand what the challenges of the job are. And I think that serving the community should be the first and foremost priority for your next chief. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Greg Thomas, and if I sit here and limp a little bit, I sprained my knee yesterday, so that means I'm getting older. I have been doing this job for almost 36 years. So you'll notice that I'm wearing a uniform because I'm also the interim captain for the city of Burien and have been since January. So again, my career, I started in 1982. Where were you in 82? That's where I started this job at the age of 21. So I grew up in police work. I grew up, actually this is my third tour of duty here in the Burien area, and I was actually here before it was a city. Always have enjoyed it. It was always challenging, always different, a lot of fun. I did most of my work in Federal Way, 15 years there, and then I have a very extensive background in administrative work. I did a lot of projects for 5 different sheriffs now, including managing our fleet, Guardian 1, the helicopter, the academy. I was also a training officer like a lot of us have been. Most of us train because we know that the next generation of cop is going to come from within. It's going to come from within the culture that we propagate. It's going to come from within the communities that we're out here serving. So one of the things I'm doing in my plea as an introduction here is saying, send us your best. We need police officers to mirror your communities. I see a lot of folks here. We've had 3 different meetings out in the community to talk about what it is that you want of your police chief. And I see a lot of those same people here. And so that tells me you're invested in your community. You want to make changes. You want us to be part of that. And we want to be part of that also. So about myself, like I say, I've been doing this for 36 years. I have 3 children. My oldest daughter is a nurse at St. Joe's Hospital on the hilltop in Tacoma. My oldest son is a state trooper in Cedar Woolley, and my youngest son is a dispatcher for the sheriff's office. So we obviously like working for the public, we like working with the public, and we're kind of fast action crowd pleasers, if you will. Both of my boys are Eagle Scouts, where all 3 of us are now assistant scoutmasters. I've been doing that for 15 years. I'm an Eagle Scout advisor, and I'm very proud of that. I take a lot of joy in helping other people raise their kids, and that's what Scouting does. I think that the city has some big challenges ahead of it, and I think that our civic groups that are here within the city are going to help us solve some of that. I think that the community is going to help us solve that, and I think we need to bring out our creativity to do that. So about me, I like doing what I'm doing. I'm here, I've been doing it for 36 years, 21 starting this. Police work was amazing to me, talking to people, but also the different feelings that the community has about police officers. Sometimes you sit down next to people and they get up and they move, right? Because they don't understand us or they don't know what we're about. So we have police academies where we send people and say, this is what our department is about. We have one going on right now. This young lady back here was part of one that we had before. So she got a chance to learn about what we do. 911, driving around in a police car, going fast, dealing with the problems of the community. It's what we do really well, and it's what a lot of us are doing at administrative level as well as a field level. So I am very pleased to be here. I never intended to run for the chief of Burien. I got here with the idea that I was going to help out. Sheriff Trahagnick asked me to come up and learn a few things, also teach a few things. So I've done both of that, and I've really enjoyed myself here. So I think this is a city I want to be a part of, and I want you to be a part of it. Thank you.
So I've never said anything in less than 4 minutes, which all of these guys have been making fun of me for. I'm going to tell you a story. Instead of going through all my resume, we're all incredibly qualified for this job, would be my expectation. We've had the assignments, we've all been promoted, we've all been screened. A couple nights ago, I got a phone call from a lady, and she said, look, I've been involved in a domestic event. I don't feel I was treated fairly. I think I need some help. And I went to the DUB Project, which is an organization on Vashon Island that helps domestic violence victims. And she said, I called the DUB Project because I didn't get the help I needed from the police department, and they gave me your number. I was in Monterey, California last night at 6 o'clock at night when I get this phone call. it struck me that somebody who I hadn't worked with in over 2 years still had a tight enough relationship with me at the Dove Project to say, this is the person you need to call when you need help because they will get you the help you need. Those are the kind of relationships we need in Burien. We need a police chief who is a person you can call at 6 o'clock at night that has the relationships in the community, that if anybody goes looking for who do I call when I need help, they're going to say you need to call Ted. He's the guy that will get you help. In this case, all I did was facilitate getting a sergeant, getting an officer, and getting it taken care of. But you need to have that buck stops here mentality, and that's how I roll in these communities that I've worked for. So, throughout my career, I've had lots of experiences, including City of SeaTech. You guys have a Police Explorers program, and we have a Police Explorer in the room with us tonight. 8 years ago, the Police Explorers was gone at Southwest Precinct. Ran out of money, it wasn't funded, it went away. I was at the City of SeaTech, I'm like, that's not okay. We have to get our juveniles back involved in our community with our police department. I wear on my uniform a Commander's Award, and my Commander's Award is because Michi and I, Michi Burnett, a community service officer up there, brought the Police Explorers back to Southwest Precinct. It was important that our kids were part of our community and part of our police department, because that relationship is what makes a difference. Police need to stop standing across the road and start standing with the communities when we have issues and talking about it, talking openly. I had to talk with somebody here today, just a little bit ago, implicit bias. We need to have that discussion. That is something we have to talk about, and we have to talk openly about it, and we have to quit having these barriers that we refuse to talk about these things with our community. I will tell you, if I'm your police chief, we'll have these conversations. We may not all agree, but we'll have the conversations. I'm not afraid to have them. I believe in having them, and I think we're all healthier for having these conversations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we're going to do now is, for the next 45 minutes, is I have cards and questions from the audience, and I'll go through those. And what I'll do is ask each of you a different question. So each of you will get different questions. So Ted, we'll go ahead and start off with you here on the first one. And then if any of you have any questions that you'd like to be considered, please bring those forward. So first one, Burien is a sanctuary city. What is your stance on police cooperating with ICE, and will you follow this? Will you follow this and not inquire on status of someone's status on calls?
Well, this is kind of a yes/no question, so you're going to get a really long answer from me. You guys get used to this. The answer is no.
Ted, I wanted to, before you get started, let's try and keep our answers to about 2 minutes. Thank you.
Unbutton your jacket and get serious here. All right, the short answer is no, we don't work with immigration. There's a fundamental need to have a relationship with your community, and you guys are going to hear me beat up on this for the next 45 minutes, but people need to be able to call the police and not fear deportation. That is not the job of local law enforcement. Immigration has their role, which is completely separate than the relationship you need to have with your community. A victim of crime needs to feel comfortable calling the police. A witness to a crime needs to feel comfortable working with the police. And that needs to be the relationship that we develop with our community, irrelevant of immigration status. So the short answer is no. We don't work with immigration. It's not our role in law enforcement at the local level. 1 minute answer.
Thank you.
You don't want to use the rest of the minute for something else?
That young lady was going to karaoke with me earlier. We can still do it.
Burien is a diverse community. You are all white men. What is your understanding of race and oppression, and how does that impact your practice?
So race and oppression. I think it exists, folks. I think it's in our society. We all come from different backgrounds. My mother's maiden name is Rigetti. That's Italian. So she comes from Pennsylvania. I've seen racism in Pennsylvania against Italians, about as white as you can be. I've seen other examples of where other people have been mistreated because they were Latino in background, they were black in background, they were any one of the many people that are represented through Vietnam, Laotian, Cambodian, etc. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't exist. What I can tell you is it doesn't exist for me. It doesn't exist for me because I've seen it up close, I've seen that it's raw, I've seen that it's unfair, it takes away a person's dignity. You have very strong community here. And what I think we need to do to solve our problems is we need to help pull these communities together to have one voice. So, oppression, you'll never see it from my department. So I have representatives here from our Office of Law Enforcement Oversight. Anytime there's a complaint against a police officer for being unfair in either the use of force or the fact that a person was treated without dignity and respect, then there's a process by which we take a look at that. A report is written. It goes through the entire chain of command to make sure that those rules and our policies are followed. Okay, gosh, it's the police kind of policing the police. Well, it is, except here's a citizen oversight group that helps us make sure we're staying on track. And that's very important for us because it is easy to get on track when you see a lot of the worst of some people at certain times of the night, right? Not everybody's the same way at 3 a.m. as they are at 6 a.m. In the morning. Things change. Burien has, I think, very different personalities, and mark me if I'm wrong, but some of you have heard of the gunfire that goes on in the middle of the night, right? Usually doesn't happen at 6 a.m. 6 to noon is people waking up, going to work, taking their kids to school, things getting done. From 12 to maybe 8 o'clock, people are coming home from work. Kids are doing their thing.
Thank you, Greg. That's 2 minutes.
Sorry.
We'll just keep going. All right. So this question is from Savannah. And Savannah, where's Savannah? Savannah is age 6. Okay? What would you tell other police officers to do?
What would I tell other police officers to do? Thanks, Savannah, for the question. So I think the number one improvement that we need to enact in Burien with our officers is to more actively engage the community. Not wait for a 911 call. Get out of the car, walk from business to business, go to the schools, visit with children, build up the positive contacts, right? Money in the bank. So that way, when something is about to happen, there's trust so that people will call us and share that information and we can intervene before it happens. That's what your next chief needs to focus on. That's a complicated thing to implement. It can't happen overnight. Our officers run from call to call, but you can be innovative. I developed a 410 schedule for the city of Burien, which allows for overlaps when we have plenty of officers, and we should be using that time to engage our community in a positive way. If a business owner or a school teacher or a student like Savannah doesn't know at least one of our officers by name, we've failed. And as your chief, that won't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. It is frustrating to hear community members say that officers tell them, quote, they are not allowed to enforce the laws, end quote. It is divisive and doesn't help improve things. How can this be changed?
Community pressure. Your elected officials and your county attorney are elected. The only way that we can make these kind of improvements is collectively to gather, caucus, vote, get your friends out, have them register, and do those things that you need to do. That's I don't want to make it a civics lesson, but that's kind of the way it is. We say all the time, why won't you prosecute this? I have a philosophy. If we ignore the little things all the time, and people get away with those constantly, the big things don't seem to bother them as much. They'll go, well, if I get away with this, I can get away with that. So I'm kind of at odds sometimes with the county attorney's office with what we're prosecuting and the crimes that we're looking at. They've changed. It's like an ever-moving target sometimes. But the voice of the community makes a difference. And I'd be willing to stand there with you and say, look, we need to have these things. These are the changes that we need to make in order to make some improvements.
Thank you, Troy. It seems like in the past few years, the communication with the public has been spotty, i.e., quote, we are planning on meetings, end quote. How will you communicate with the public, and how can we hold you accountable?
Well, let me start backward. You can hold me accountable by speaking to the mayor and also speaking to the city manager, because ultimately that's who I work for. The police department is part of the executive branch of government. So it's not legislative, it's the executive branch. So technically, well, not even technically, he would be my boss. Now also, it's part of the sheriff's office, so I would have two bosses. So I'd be kind of double-minded there. But anyway. And going back to the other question, and Brian, could you give that to me again?
It seems like in the past few years, the communication with the public has been spotty, i.e. we are planning on meetings. How will you communicate with the public, and how can we hold you accountable?
Okay, well, I spoke about the accountability piece. I believe that the chief that you're going to select needs to have it in their DNA that they want to go out and talk to you. They need to get the pulse of the community. So ask. That, for one item there is to ask. Ask for a meeting. The police chief will want to get out there and talk with you, but what if he's missing the target? What if he's talking to one group when he should really be talking to another? So if that occurs, simply ask. I believe also that the police chief needs to get out there and keep you informed, and also deliver a dose, if I dare say, a bit of reality, so that when certain questions do crop up, that you do get it from a police chief's perspective and gives you the honest, the truth. Okay? So if we can't deliver on a particular promise, or we can't deliver on a particular task that we've told you that we could do, or that we should be doing, you need to know why. All right? So that's the thing. I believe that your chief needs to get out there.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. What will you do to develop and promote anti-racist policies and practices in the police force?
I think this is going to start with training. Give you guys a little bit of my history here. So I'm currently actually working on a thesis through Naval Postgraduate focused on implicit bias and procedural justice. Excuse me, get water. It is imperative that we start having these discussions. What is implicit bias? How does it affect our reactions? What's the research? What's the science? We need to have these discussions within the police force. We need to have these discussions within our community, and we need to sit down and have open, honest discussions. Office of Law Enforcement Oversight happens to be here. She knows my thesis work, because thank you very much. I go ask her these questions. Let's talk about it. I'm not afraid to talk to the Office of Law Enforcement Oversight and say, hey, what are we doing wrong? How can we be more engaged with our community? One of the projects that I'm currently working on through civil service is having community members involved in our hiring process. So the oral boards are not a process where police officers pick the next police officer. They're a process where the community picks the next police officer. You should have a say in who your officers are, not just have us show up at the door. You will care less about the outcome of that process if you're engaged in the process and in the discussion all the way along than if we just give you the outcome. Here's your next officer. Those are the type of things we need to be looking at as a community, is where can we be engaged all the way along this process, and that's what adds that accountability when we have these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you build esprit de corps within your staff?
So actually, I love building this week score amongst our staff. One thing I believe in is branding. So when I came out here in January, one thing I noticed is we have officers who work for the sheriff's office, but we also work for the city of Burien. So a lot of our officers were wearing sheriff patches on their uniform or on their jacket, and maybe a Burien patch on their other jacket or on their other uniform. So the question would be is, when someone's on scene, how would you as a citizen know who are your cops and who are the sheriff's cops? So I call it branding, right? It's who's paying the bill. So one of the things that I did is I asked, hey, let's first of all, let's all get in the right uniform. That's a big part of it. Number two is let's find out what the city is about. And we've seen that through city council. So we're acting the way the community and the city expects us to act, right? Cordial, courteous, kind, dignity, listening with empathy. We're doing that. We're doing those things. That helps build your esprit de corps. We also have a tendency to say nothing when people do good things. So we do say good things. We say thank you. We say thank you to the community for helping us serve you, right? We have some gals and people that drop off cookies at the precinct all the time. Hey, we thank you. We thank you for your service. We write them back letters and thank them for supporting us. So this, support your local sheriff is huge. Support your local police chief is also huge. But how many of you know the officers that serve you? You may have seen a few, hopefully in good situations, but generally you don't. And that's another part that I would want to do is I want the city employees to know who they work with. And part of the way I would do that is I would like to have a seat in City Hall where they can talk with me a little bit more. We have 2 separate buildings, City Hall and the police station, precinct right across the road here. That distance can sometimes kill communications, can sometimes kill esprit de corps. But I want my officers to look like they work for the city, to act like they work for the city, and don't forget where the support is coming from, and that's from you folks and from their management network.
Thank you very much. What kind of help are you willing to give parents who have children out of control if the parents ask for your intervention?
So, oftentimes, law enforcement is the first call when children are in crisis. Officers need to have the right training and experience to properly deal with that. One of the things I did while I was second in command in the city of Burien is I ensured that every officer that worked there had been through the 40-hour crisis intervention training. 40 hours, that's the longest training that they currently offer. It is far beyond the 8 hours that was required at the time. And that gives them the tools to better deal with youth who are in crisis. The next thing that needs to occur is we need to understand who the social service providers are and how to connect people in need to those services. We have a community service officer in the city of Burien. We retooled that job a couple of years ago. Their primary mission is to understand the services and connect officers who have people in need to those services. Our current CSO, her name is Michiko, and she's currently learning the job. She's in training because we lost our last one. Carlos Marquez was hired as a deputy. He's just finishing the academy. And Michiko will be that go-between to connect officers who are on calls to service providers. We should always be willing to go to households, to not be judgmental, to try to understand the cause of the problem, and then do whatever we can to connect those people with the proper services. Thank you.
As the face of the police in Burien, what do you do on a daily basis to work out and remain fit in your job? Emergency situations, chases and weapon skills, and precision marksmanship.
I call it SWAT game. So, obviously we have different levels of where we're at in our career. And I think it's important that a police officer, when a police officer comes to your door, and I learned this a long time ago from a sergeant of mine, he said, I don't want to call the police and open the door and look at somebody that I don't think can do the job that I can do. They don't have to be the fittest or the tallest or the strongest or whatever, but they got to look the part. And I think that's important. Now, I'm sitting at a desk, right? It is very difficult now for me to offer those things, kind of services that I was doing, 10 years ago. I chase people now, and I loved it. I was doing that all the time. So you have a different mindset. And I probably could make it across the parking lot now, I think, but we don't have a system where we mandate physical fitness. So every officer, just to get into the academy, but after that, every officer has to take that accountability on themselves. So I've always been a big proponent of staying physically fit. I would encourage it. I would, go on 5Ks with the officers that work in there, encourage them. We've got a Refuse to Abuse 5K coming up. If we have involved in things like that, but most of them understand that in order to survive this job, you have to maintain physical fitness.
Thank you.
where I'm at now or where I'm projecting to be?
I will leave that up to you.
All right, this is a very good question. I'll tell you what we're doing now. At Sound Transit, I'll let it be known that we are having a vigorous discussion regarding the constitutionality of simple stops and delivering or issuing infractions. My position is this. When we go out and we are conducting law enforcement, whether it be simple or whether it be very complex, that it be done constitutionally. That is very important. And so even though that what we're doing at Sound right now, our vigorous discussion is regarding a very low level of contact, detention, and whether we issue or not, it's very important because that is very customer driven. So what we're doing is taking a step back and evaluating that. It's very important. I value and will promote constitutional policing. Now, there's a lot to unpack to describe all that, but it does involve fairness. It involves people feeling that they were treated well, and there's a sense of justice with that. I'm a believer that the law, to be executed by officers, there has to be a sense of reason and mercy at times. So that is part of the values that I hold as an officer and as a chief. Thank you.
How would you describe your leadership style?
I would describe it as a lead by example style. One of the things we talked about tonight is how to develop these relationships with the community, how to have accountability for police departments, even things going back as far as physical fitness. You have to do what you're telling other people to do. You have got to model the behavior. If you want to be the chief of Burien, you've got to become the face of Burien. You've got to be in the school. You've got to be engaged with the community. And somebody said earlier, every kid should know the name of one officer. Everybody in this community should know the name of their police chief. On the East Coast, a police chief is a deeply vetted position within your community, and it needs to be. Everybody should know the name of your police chief. You should be actively involved in community events. When there's issues in your community, I should become the one who models that for my people, because then they know what the expectation is. And then you show them appreciation when they do what you expect. You go out and do a community meeting. You go out and engage in a positive interaction. You have an idea for a new program. We should support that. And that way you get the entire department believing that that's the way you do it. But it starts with that leadership by modeling behavior right up front. I'm not a big, huge disciplinarian. I believe in accountability. I far more believe in modeling, setting expectations, and rewarding the positive behavior. You have 43 people in this department. If 43 people are all doing good things, that is better than just one person doing good things. You have to show them what it is, show them how you want it to look, and then support it when they're doing what they need to do. If they do something wrong, you hold them accountable. But that's a very small part of what you should be doing as a police chief. You should be doing the other half of the work. Thank you.
How would you work with human service providers in the city to assist homeless and vulnerable individuals you interact with?
So, would everybody here agree that we have a homeless issue in Burien? I bet you would, right? So I've been a part of at least 3 different tent cities throughout my assignments up north. And there's a lot of rules that need to be in place for those cities to work well within the community. So human resources are the experts. I take direction really well. I give direction really well. But I think we need to ask a lot of questions of what is the philosophy by which we're going to deal with our homeless population? How are we going to do that? We're concerned about basically what they need for shelter, food, medical supplies, mental health is a huge issue out here. What is in place in the city to do that? And I think almost everybody within the city would agree that we are woefully prepared for the type of problem that we are running into daily. My officers are running into people with mental health issues all the time on the calls that they go to. We pretty much live in the library where we have a lot of issues like that. So what I would do is say, I would become part of that human resources team. And then we try to figure out where are we going? What do we really want to do? How do we get there? And then make the police department part of the problem. I'm sorry, part of the problem solving. So the idea would be that people look at us and they look at us as, we're the authoritarians, right? We're there to arrest people. there's no way you're going to arrest your way out of this society's problems. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. So maybe part of our solution is to work on the problem in neighboring cities that border ours to see how we can help them help the people that are coming into our area that need the services that some of them can provide better than we can. So a lot of it has to do with coordinating with the people who are the experts, and that's our human resource folks. Thank you.
What steps would you take to become more visible in the community?
Well, I think I've touched on this a little bit, but I'll reiterate. The chief needs to be out in the community on a daily basis, putting more miles on with their feet than with their car, mingling with the business owners, mingling with the residents, attending community events and functions so that everybody knows who the chief is, who the captain is, and gets to know the officers. It's imperative. We have to build that trust in advance of a problem. If you meet me when you call 911, I failed you as a community. That relationship needs to be built ahead of time.
How do you feel about the Explorers program, and how do you plan to support or not support them?
So back in 1991, when I was in Arizona, I went to the Community Relations Division. And part of that, the reason I went there was because I wanted to be an Explorer advisor. So from 1991 to 1994, I worked in community relations, and I was an Explorer advisor. In 1992, King County had a very dynamic Explorer program. Over here at the Red Lion, they had an event, a national event for explorers. I brought up my group of explorers from Arizona to participate in this event that they had at SeaTac. Those events aren't nearly as big anymore. I'm a huge proponent of the Explorer program. I followed Ted into SeaTac when he left, and I helped continue the Explorer program there. I think it's an excellent way to get youth exposed to your police officers, policies, procedures, and things like that. It gives them something to do. They then, in turn, set a great example for other youth that they work with or that see them, and they do a great job of self-recruiting back into the program, and we can make these things thrive a little bit more, if you will. I think it's important, but it needs community support as well. Thank you.
So next question, what exactly is underlying? What exactly and specifically would community policing look like in Burien under your leadership?
That's a lot to unpack. Community policing is really the engagement of our officers with citizens. But let me give a caveat to all that. Community policing may mean different things to different people. When I was doing community policing in White Center, and this was back in the mid-90s, it was community engagement. It was going out and checking on businesses and recruiting the citizens to join us in the efforts to make White Center not just an overall better community, not just safer, but overall better. So a lot of this also has to have the community engagement. That is a pillar of community policing. If you, the citizens, are willing to engage and support the police and give some of your time, it will work. If the officer is left to just try to drum something up and try to meet with you, but you're not really that engaged and you don't want to, it will not work. Now that's the reality. So what it would look like, I would try to get you engaged with us, because this is an overall effort. It's easy to talk about wraparound services, but if you're not willing to be out there on the front line, or contribute, or give, and that includes money and time, okay, it won't really work. Not to put a plug for me, but I just wrote a check to help one gal go to Africa.
because it was important to send that person out there and give service, administrate to the poor, very, very poor people. So it takes opening up your wallet, your time, your effort to make it work.
What experience do you have effectively dealing with gang violence?
During the introduction, I don't know if I told you guys what I currently do. I'm currently the commander of the Major Crimes Unit for the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. So when I got promoted, I came out here to Southwest Precinct. I was at the precinct for about 2.5 years and was brought downtown to take over the Major Crimes Unit. In that role, we're deeply vetted in the investigations which have the gang nexus. We also have members within our team that are on the, can't remember the name of the task force off the top of my crime right now, but the Violent Crime Task Force, which is specifically working on the gang violence. So specific to the most current thing, it's my team that's doing the investigation related to our most current event. So I've gotten pretty deeply vetted in preparation for this interview, and as part of that, I talked to quite a few people. I talked to Joe Gagliardi, who happens to work for me, but also is the regional expert in gangs. I said, what's going on here? What are we going to do about it? How do we fix it? And this kind of stems back about 18 months since all this violence started in the South Sound. And we were also deeply vetted in working with the other communities in the area as we looked at the gang problem in Southwest. It's about analytics. It's about identifying who the gang members are. It's also about working on how to get people out of gangs and how to prevent people from going into gangs. And the final step is you have to hold people accountable once they commit crimes of violence. That's the reality. That's that bottom line. Like, we can work with you. It's about prevention. It's about relationships until you commit a crime of violence. At that point, we have to be engaged in the criminal justice process, and we don't accept that in our community. That relationship is what needs to develop to get people out of gangs, to get people working with police, to get them working with us and communicating who's in the gang, who's violent, who's going down this road, who's carrying the guns. We have to remember that most of the kids in Burien are good kids. This is a very small group, and we need to be working with the good kids to identify who the few people are that need our help, and then we have to help the families. We have to help the community. We as a group, in this room, we have council members, we have the city managers. We're the government part of this. The school district, the libraries in here. We all need to be working together to support these families. Thank you, Ted. Thank you.
Do we need more block party community involvement, or has our sense of community been lost for good?
Oh, absolutely. So Block Watch. Anybody here have a Block Watch party recently? Nobody in the room, maybe one person's had Block Watch? So Block Watch is kind of easy. It's your community, whatever you call your community. It could be your cul-de-sac, could be a large area like Chelsea Park, could be Seahurst. Gets together and says, you know something? We all live here. We're all part of the solution. Let's get to know each other, right? So that's part of your basic crime fighting role is, I'm willing to look out for my neighbor, and my neighbor's got to be willing to look out for me. So I'm glad this came up because actually Captain Olmsted and I, we worked over at Southeast Precinct last year. We kind of revigorated the Block Watch party over there. So Danny and I together gave at least 3,000 people our telephone numbers, to our cell phones, to the public. Guess what? They can call and talk to, at that time, the commander of the precinct. People here, when they go to Block Watch parties and I'm there, they're going to get my phone number. They can talk to the chief of police for Burien anytime they want to, folks. 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And a lot of people go, man, you're nuts. What are you doing giving the public, thousands of people your phone number? They have questions. And most of the questions aren't crazy questions. It's, why was the helicopter over my house at 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday? Right? It's stuff that's very reasonable. And sometimes they just want to know, how do you get into the bureaucracy to get questions or answers for questions that they have? So I don't mind being that person. That's kind of what my job is. The people, the community is my job. So I love Block Watches because it brings community together. It gives me a chance to get on and talk to a lot of different people, and everybody has different flavors to their problems in their community. It helps us address those flavors. And they realize, we're cops, right? If I put on a hot dog on a barbecue, I'm there. That's easy. I'm there. Very, very effective tool. Please, if you haven't thought about having a Block Watch, consider having one. National Night Out is August 2nd. Usually it's the second Tuesday of the month. Great time for communities to get out and do that. Gives us a chance to go out and meet a lot of folks. So again, Block Watches are great. Thank you.
What happened to the gang unit, and can we bring it back?
So the gang unit was done away with about 3 years ago. It was a decision made in light of necessary budget cuts by the sheriff, then Sheriff Urquhart. The city of Burien had 2 detectives that participated in the gang unit, but the gang unit was a larger group of county deputies that worked the entire county. We need to bring back a regional youth violence task force that includes detectives trained in gang detection and intervention and enforcement. It's not just a gang problem. There is a gang problem, but it's also a youth violence problem. Our society has taken a left turn. People are solving problems with violence and with weapons more so today than ever before. I would, as your chief, call for a South County regional task force. I would meet with all of the police chiefs and beg them to help form one, and we would work together, both in education, intervention with our service providers, and targeted enforcement on people who are known to be carrying weapons and committing violent acts. Thank you.
How will you help to avoid the criminalization of people experiencing homelessness?
Well, we often get called to homeless issues, and unfortunately the police are not the answer to homelessness, in my opinion. We could be a part of the solution, but the solution needs to come from the community. There's a lot of social services available, but coordinating them sometimes doesn't always work. It hasn't been effective. You almost need a coordinator of social services just for homelessness. Somebody to advocate what all these resources are, give the information out there, and give people the services. Occasionally, we come across people that they prefer to be homeless. It seems weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's what they want to be. As long as they're not committing any crimes, there's really not much that we're going to do with them, except trying to refer them to services. We probably have a lot of services available at our disposal, but it's not always shared with us. I'll make it a goal that I find out every service that's available within the city of Burien or King County, and have that at our officers' disposal to help them refer services. Get in contact with, whatever agency, and also what can we do as a community? Do we have religious organizations that can help out with this? It doesn't have to be just a government solution. What are our community solutions that we can add into this as well? That's a big part of it. We all have a role in it. How are we going to do it? The police department is not the spot to manage this. We're just going to need to be a part of the solution.
What role does diversity play in a community with respect to law enforcement, and how are you intending to approach it as Burien's police chief?
Diversity is huge. And in fact, some thoughts have been ruminating in my mind. How would I diversify the agency? How can I diversify Burien PD? And I believe, as a chief, go out and recruit. Now, I can't necessarily go out and bring somebody into the KCSO umbrella because we have different processes for that. But we do have a workforce that is diversified. Maybe not as many as I would like or as we would like, but they are there. And I would like to recruit them. I wish I could speak Spanish. That is so valuable. And now at 58, maybe I can take a course or something, but I've always viewed that as valuable. I think officers that are bilingual are extremely valuable. I even tried, I remember years ago, a little bit off topic, but tried to write a newsletter in Cambodia, but that was a trick. But those ideas have come forth. So I value diversity, and I'm not up here just saying that, okay? Again, this will be an overused phrase, but really the police chief is about fit. But I'm just trying to relate to you my true values. It's very important for the city. This is a diverse city. And so multi-cultures and a lot of languages. So I need those officers on my force.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got 5 more questions, and then we'll start the last round. So, explain your philosophy on de-escalation and how a department led by you will reflect that philosophy.
So de-escalation starts with training. There's obviously a movement on the national and the local level to get back into this de-escalation training. It is important that officers understand the importance of de-escalating situations, that we aren't part of the problem, but we come in and we're part of the solution. A lot of that is how you talk to people, it's your style, it's your demeanor. I told you guys at the start, we're going to keep going back to this relationship component. Relationships are part of de-escalating. If you can walk up to a group of kids who are all animated, who are all excited, and you can go into that group and say hi to somebody by name, that entire situation changes like that. All you have to have is one relationship in that group, and you can change that relationship. Somebody can go, hey, Ted's pretty cool, I know him. That changes the entire makeup of that scenario from something that's going to escalate to something that de-escalates. So you can look at it from a group perspective or from the individual perspective. If you're dealing with somebody in crisis, I got all the time in the world. I'm not in a hurry. Right now, you are the most important person to me, and we're going to sit down and talk. And that's okay to have that talk. A lot of times you escalate it by pushing the action, by being in a hurry, by trying to escalate. We're not having a hurry. We can sit there and talk, and we can try to work through the problems. Understand, most people we deal with, we're dealing with a good person having a bad day. We got to slow down and look at that. You are a good person having a bad day, and how are we going to work through it? That's what de-escalation is about. Thank you.
I'm a mother of a young man of color, and my husband is also a person of color. I am concerned how police will interact with them if they are pulled over or are in need of help. Because, for example, last summer, Tommy Lee was shot in the back and was killed. He was not a threat, however, the officer felt he was. What is your best practice for cultural awareness and de-escalation?
Okay, so building a little bit on what Captain Bo talked about, de-escalation skills. And it can be applied regardless of the ethnicity of the person involved. Okay, so de-escalation skills. I'm wearing a uniform. This is a de-escalation skill. Right? I walk into a crowd, people are going to react because there's a police officer amongst them. I'm telling you, I go into a restaurant, I can sit at a table with 20 people, pretty soon I'm sitting by myself, right? They're not comfortable with it. But I can command a scene by just being me. Maybe my physical size, maybe my ability to speak to them, maybe my ability to talk, really whisper and fairly be heard. Or I can talk in Savannah and I can get along and have a great conversation, right? Or I can get loud if I have to, right? I can repeat things. Sir, please, calm down. Please, calm down. Please, calm down. I have a lot of skills and a lot of ability in my physical presence, in my ability to communicate, and I'm learning more about that every day. You all do it too. If you have kids, if you were a kid, you do the same thing, right? That's how we manipulate and talk to our parents, right? De-escalation skills, keeping things from getting out of hand. Person of color, traffic stops. We have a lot of training that tells us how to do things, and we're very much a playbook kind of a mentality, right? ABC, license, registration, proof of insurance. You should always have, regardless of the situation, you should always have the dignity and the respect. A lot of times we're saying sir, and a lot of times the driver is saying sir back, right? That's respect. That works both ways. Now, when you go up to the window and the first thing you hear is a lot of foul language, that can change the scene, right? It does for you. If I was to walk up to you as a police officer in full uniform and use a lot of really harsh and abusive language, that would not make for good relations between the two of us, right? So, my officers are taught how to act. Again, they're supposed to reflect the community. The community is diverse. The reactions and the way they deal with the public should be diverse. And should always be with dignity. Always be listening first. Again, de-escalation skill, right? Listening first. And then communicating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last last year, we had a Highland School District student killed by police, and he was armed with a pen. How will you engage with training on lethal and excessive force to avoid such tragedies?
So I mentioned earlier the importance of crisis intervention training and how we made sure all of our Burien officers went to the longest class and most in-depth class. We'll continue that as chief to make sure that our officers are getting the best training. There's also procedural justice training. There's tactical training, de-escalation training that all the officers should go to. It's important, it's critical that our officers have the tools necessary to avoid potential force situations. For the first time in the history of our department, we're just about ready to deploy less lethal shotguns. These guns shoot beanbags at people, which means that we can use distance to subdue people instead of force a confrontation and be close. Okay? The incident that's referred to here, they tried to use a taser 2 different times. It didn't work. And because they were so close, they felt that they had to use deadly force. That wouldn't have happened if we had less lethal shotguns. So there's the silver lining. I know that doesn't help Tommy Lee's family, and we're very sad and very sorry that that incident happened. But as a result, we now have a better tool to deploy to our officers to avoid those things. Thank you.
What is the role of police in restorative justice programs for youth and keeping them out of the criminal justice system?
Again, community-based issue. We're going to have to find solutions to youth violence, gang problems, all these type of things. We're going to have to really sit down and work it out together. I think we do our part in small ways with school resource officers, sometimes youth athletic programs, community police academies, and things of this nature. The tone and tenor set by a chief. When I do community events, I always bring a patrol deputy with me because I want the people to be able to engage with the officers from that level. These are the people that are patrolling their neighborhoods. And so part of that, again, working within the city of Burien would be to really encourage and demonstrate the engagement with the youth. As far as the justice programs go, again, a lot of these things are not led by the police departments. These issues right now, they're changing the juvenile justice system. We don't really have a lot of say. There was not really a lot of discussion with us about it. We kind of have to do what the hands we're dealt sometimes. And as we move forward in this new process, we're going to have to figure things out. I hope it's effective. We're going to have time to figure that out. But again, community engagement, if it's not effective, the voice of the community needs to be reflected back to say, what else are we going to do? What are we going to try? Where are we going to move with that?
Last one.
What are your strategies for building positive community engagement while leading your staff to be proactive, firm, fair, and friendly?
Well, before I answer, thank you for listening to us and for letting us have an opportunity to speak out and give some of our what's on our minds. Strategy is this. It's very simple. I believe that the theme, I'm going to keep this sort of simple, the theme starts at the top. And so I believe as a patrol commander or as a chief that you remind them to say, you be nice. Conduct your policing in a constitutional basis. Be fair, be just, take a step back. Let things happen. Let things unfold. And now I don't mean let things happen and let them get out of control. But take your time. Don't rush in. don't succumb to a pressure of having to engage too quick. Those are the things that are very important out there. That's part of the community engagement. And that's what helps develop the trust that is so necessary between the community and the police.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask the candidates to have a 1 minute just closing statement based on the questions and closing statement to the audience here. Before I do that, I'd like to recognize our candidates. For those of you who apply for positions, who step out, and take that risk to stand and be in front of the citizens and to be, in front of your peers and the community, let's give them a hand for taking the And lastly, I'd like to thank our audience here, our community. Those questions, I would say, were pretty awesome. So congratulations to you. And we will have this, Scott, will it be on video? It will be?
Yeah, we'll post it.
So we can talk to the community about the opportunity to see this if they missed it. But anyway, thank you all very much for coming. So let me ask each one of you to just give a quick 1 minute closing. I'll start with Don.
Okay. Again, thank you for the opportunity to do this. Very quickly, I'm not in this for the promotion, and I'm not in this for the rank. I'm in this because I enjoy the city, I enjoy the area, I want to be a part of it. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe that I could come out and make a difference.
Thank you for the opportunity to come out and present tonight. The thanks is really for you to be being part of this, because a theme that I've hit on tonight, it's about the community and the response back from you. I've never been a police chief before, so this is a learning experience for me. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to have this, be in a position to try for this. I believe I can make a difference. I have a history and a background of leadership, and you heard a lot about fit and different things like that tonight. And again, we talk about those things, but I love the involvement in the community. I'm heavily and deeply involved in community relations, and I think it's an important part of being a police officer and a leader, a police executive. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Brian and city staff for arranging this, for our council, for leading the example and showing how important it is to be here. I believe I'll be an excellent chief for the city of Burien. I believe I'll be engaged, I'll be innovative, I'll be compassionate, I'll lead the charge from the front. I'll always have an open door. You'll always be able to call me. One of the first things I'll do is have an open house where we unlock the precinct and invite everybody to come in and see what each of our offices are doing. And I believe that we can team up together and form a partnership and make Burien an even more awesome city than it already is. So thank you for considering it.
I guess I could say thank you for letting us come and entertain you a little bit with some of our stories that we've been through. My goal as your police chief is to be able to talk to Savannah and say, Savannah, what do you need? What do you need to grow up and become a viable, important person in this community to help us? Got some folks that are going to Highline High School and some of the schools around here. What can we do, what can I do as the chief to make sure that you have a long and happy and productive life? How do we do that? How do we solve our problems here and talk and do it in a humane way? Do it as people? So my character, pretty easy going, right? And hopefully you can see that from my presentation. That's the same way I deal with the communities. Information, that telephone number, right, that we talked about. Give me a call, you got a question, we can answer it. That is how you open up the door to getting things solved in a community. Communication is always the biggest problem people have when things arise in the community, and that's how I'm going to solve it. So I look forward to being your chief. I appreciate the opportunity to come out here and give you a little bit of my views on life, and thank you again.
thank you guys for letting me close. If you guys select me as your police chief, you get not just me, you get my whole family. And I haven't talked about them at all tonight because I want to close with that. One of the things a police chief needs to do is actually be engaged in the community, not just a police chief. They need to be engaged in your community because they're part of your community. If I'm your chief, you guys are going to meet my wife, you're going to meet my 8-year-old, my 5-year-old daughters, you're going to see us at the grocery store, you're going to see us at the church. You guys will understand that my dad is actually a member of this community and my mom is a member of this community. My mom's a business owner in White Center. My dad is a Normandy Park resident and a regular at one of your dining establishments over here. I'm deeply vetted in this community, and that's what you'll get from me as your police chief. Thank you.
So we have some cards again that are up front, and it's comments and feedback, and we're asking for you to give your thoughts regarding the strengths, concerns, and comments for each of our candidates today. So we have a card here, and if you can stop by and fill that out, we will take that information and use that to consider as we move forward with the selection process. Again, let's give another hand to thank our candidates. Very much appreciate your interest in Burien. We do have something special here, and we really look forward to this relationship between the community and our police department and where we're heading in the future. We have a bright future here in Burien, and we're excited for you guys to potentially be a part of that. So thank you. So we will have, for the next 20 minutes, we'll just have easy to talk to candidates. And again, thank you very much for coming tonight. Make sure to fill out